Some of the greatest moments in all of video game history started with a powerful catalyst. A great idea, a team with a dream, or maybe just a single person with enough motivation. But this moment started because of a bear.
Oh boy.
Baldur's Gate 3 was an unexpected success. We know this from the reaction of the developers, the industry, heck, even the players. See, Baldur's Gate 3 was a niche game with a very niche audience. It was a game that wasn't necessarily supposed to succeed in the way that it did. And it was also a game that was in early access for 3 years. See, early access is a bit of a double-edged sword for the gaming industry. It can help provide valuable feedback and help identify bugs and fixes and different issues players may have. However, it can also hurt the full release of a game in several ways. One of the biggest risks of early access is basically it's a soft launch of the game. While Baldur's Gate 3 only released a portion of the first act, 30 or 40 hours of gameplay, many players still bought in and viewed this as the initial launch of the game. Not only does this potentially drive down your day one sales figures and concurrent player numbers, but it also helps to, well, mask the full release of the game later. As an example, content creator Asmongold and other creators thought that the game had already come out. Even had pointed out that they had forgot that they had even made the purchase of the game years ago. Not only can early access lessen the impact of launch, but it can also lead to a lot of preconceived opinions about the game and their initial impressions of the early builds that they played. However, Baldur's Gate 3 didn't suffer from any of this. Not in the slightest. I had to take a little bit of a break from YouTube because work really geared up, working 70 to 80 hours a week, but during that time, one of the questions that kept gnawing at me is why? How did Baldur's Gate 3 rise to such meteoric heights? A game that released to such incredible praise and also incredibly high concurrent player numbers and day one sales numbers. A game within a very niche genre and an even more niche audience. Games like Stardew Valley and Minecraft and Portal didn't release to such high praise. These were games that bloomed later but are now massive successes in their own right. But Baldur's Gate 3 skipped all of that. A game that I believed would have been a late bloomer itself, blossomed the day that it was released. So why? How? Well, that's what we're going to explore today. Now, for us to be able to explore this thoroughly, we need to look at the point of impact. We're going to call it the point of bear pact. That doesn't really work. Not as well as I thought it would. It was the bear. It was always the bear. Baldur's Gate 3's bear scene stands as a testament to the power of internet virality. This unexpected and controversial element of the game's storyline ignited a whirlwind of social media engagement, transforming a relatively unknown title into a global sensation. The idea of a romantic encounter between a player character and a shape-shifting druid struck a chord with many gamers, sparking a wave of memes and GIFs. GIFs? GIFs. We're going to call them GIFs. Today, they are known as GIFs. And other online internet discussions. The scene's absurdity and the unexpected nature of it caught the attention of RPG enthusiasts and casual observers alike, propelling Baldur's Gate 3 into the limelight. Social media platforms played a very pivotal role in amplifying the bear scene's virality. Screenshots, videos, and reactions flooded Twitter, Reddit, and other platforms, generating buzz that extended far beyond the gaming community. This scene's controversial nature further fueled its spread, as people started debating the appropriateness of the scene and its implications for the game's overall tone. People started asking, what is this game? While some people didn't approve of it, this scene was a statement. You could do whatever you wanted in Baldur's Gate 3, and Larian seemingly thought of every permutation. The impact of the bear scene on Baldur's Gate 3's popularity was undeniable, and still is to this day. But this was only the spark that lit the fuse, not the charge that went off. Now, internet virality is something you can only hope for. You can't really make it happen. While I'm sure there are some people that would like to claim that they've unlocked the secrets of the internet, it's just not true. A lot of it is just based on luck. And something like this is not something that you can recreate. It's an incredible boon, a massive success story for Baldur's Gate 3, but it's not something that every developer can do or even really wish for. And it's something that ultimately ended up getting Larian Studios banned on TikTok. Apparently they have no sense of humor whatsoever. But the really cool thing about this is that because of the chances that Baldur's Gate 3 and Larian by extension takes, this is something that drives companies to be a little bit more controversial, not be as conventional as they have been in the past, and just try to do something new and something fresh. And that's something that a lot of players held on to. That's what I definitely saw in the game when I initially got into early access. I saw that this was going to be a different experience, that they were taking chances, that this wasn't going to be like any other game that I've played before. And I was right. And everybody else that also bought in on that idea were right as well. But Baldur's Gate 3 was now in the spotlight. A lot of people were talking about it, and a new discussion arose. And that conversation that started was a relatively controversial one. A band of developers talking about how gamers in Baldur's Gate 3 don't set a new standard for RPGs moving forward. A conversation that happened well before the game's release, and I think that's something really important to hold on to. Game developers telling you that a game is so good that they can't match it, that it could destroy studios if they even tried, and the game's not even out yet. If that doesn't get you interested or at least a little bit excited about a game's release, I'm not sure what will. Just as a summary, Baldur's Gate 3 had sparked a heated discussion online about whether or not Baldur's Gate 3 should set a new standard for games moving forward. Proponents of this view argued that Baldur's Gate 3 raised the bar in terms of storytelling, character development, environmental design, performance capture, and just overall player engagement. They pointed to the game's intricate plot, complex characters, immersive world, lack of microtransactions, and innovative gameplay mechanics as evidence of its groundbreaking nature. Opponents of this view, however, expressed concerns that setting Baldur's Gate 3 as a new standard could create unrealistic expectations for RPGs in the future, particularly for small development studios with very limited resources. They argued that Baldur's Gate 3's high production values and lengthy development cycle were not feasible for all developers, and that they should be focusing on creating unique and engaging experiences, and that should be their primary goal. This debate highlighted the challenges of balancing innovation and creativity with accessibility and feasibility within the gaming industry. While Baldur's Gate 3 undoubtedly pushed the boundaries of what an RPG could achieve, it also raised questions about whether such ambitious projects could become the norm or whether there needs to be a more diverse range of experiences, and that's what should be encouraged. Now, ultimately, the question of whether or not Baldur's Gate 3 sets a new standard moving forward is something that falls on us, the customers, the players, because we're the ones that say whether or not we like something and whether or not we want to see more of that in the future. It's up to the studios to be able to meet that demand in the first place. And I've had this discussion many of times on this channel as well as on my podcast as well. However, when it comes to the smaller studios, of course we do not have those same expectations for them, and I feel like they should know that by now. But when we see AAA developers entering into that discussion saying the same thing, that they shouldn't be held to that same standard, or that Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't change things, that's when our ears perk up and we say, well, wait a minute, what is this game that these guys are so afraid of us playing? What is this game that they're so afraid that's gonna set a new standard for games moving forward? And boy, yes, they should have been afraid, because that game did all of the things that a lot of the people were talking about at the time. And it's something that didn't squeeze us for every red cent that we had. And I think this is one of the most valuable discussions that we've had in this modern gaming era. There's been a lot of discussion on why games are bad, or monetization, or whatever it might be, but this was an instance in which us, the customer, came forward and said, this is what we want, this is what we like, we're sick of this, and we said our piece. And I think that's great. I think that's, again, a really valuable discussion. And I think it's something that's really, it contrasts really well with the discussions around Modern Warfare 3 right now, where you have a game that obviously was supposed to be a DLC, a expansion for Modern Warfare 2 that's now being sold for $70 as a full game. Something that has a 3-hour watered down campaign and just basically a bunch of reused assets from the last game being used for the multiplayer of the new game. It's ridiculous and disgusting, and I hate you for it. So I'm not buying it. Not a chance. But the popularity of Baldur's Gate didn't stop there. First, they enticed us with a little bit of a bear. Then they talked to us, and we started hearing about the game, and we started talking and discussing it. But then they went and had one of the best marketing campaigns that I have ever seen. Ever. Baldur's Gate 3's marketing campaign was a masterclass in organic creative promotion. Instead of relying on tired traditional advertising methods, Larian focused on building relationships with popular influencers and content creators within the gaming community. One of the most successful aspects of this campaign was the sponsorship of animations, music videos, and more. Larian Studios partnered with several talented artists and animators to create high-quality content that showcased the game's world, characters, and story. Videos made by Mashed, Joel Haver, Alina Gingertail, Jonathan Young, and more flooded social media, only serving to drive up excitement and engage the unaware. Another clever move by Larian Studios was when they decided to sponsor the popular High Rollers D&D YouTube channel. They paid the voice acting cast of Baldur's Gate 3 to play a one-shot D&D campaign in the same world as the game. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game of characters, and players love those characters. Seeing the voice actors embody those characters and allowing the players to be able to engage with them in a much more intimate way with more intimate content further drove community engagement and the popularity of the game. The first episode of this campaign is now High Roller's most viewed video on YouTube, sitting at over 2 million views. Now, I actually made a video about a community post that Joel Haver had made that Larian Studios came up to these creators and just said, do whatever you want. You have full creative freedom. All we ask is that you just make it about our game. And that not only stands as a testament to their own artistic integrity, but it's just, man, it's so good to hear that they just say, just do whatever you want. They want the creator to have that freedom specifically because, well, they obviously are good at what they do. So if you just let them do what they do, you're going to find success in the end. And it's something that worked out really well because all of these channels across the board experienced major boosts in not only subscriber counts, but millions of views across just about every single one of these channels. And the thing is that when you have all this content that's being generated around a certain subject, like Baldur's Gate 3, what it does is it starts to drive the rest of the content creators up around it as well. Legacy creators like Wolfheart FPS, who's been making Baldur's Gate 3 videos since, well, Baldur's Gate 3 ever even existed, or even before then with a bunch of other games. He's a big-time CRPG guy. Definitely go watch him. But even smaller creators like myself experienced a massive boost just because you had these force multipliers of all these different content creators with these larger channels making these videos that grew in popularity, extending the reach of Baldur's Gate 3, extending the reach of just knowing the game's existence at all, and it drew all these people to watch more videos on it. Our videos became suggested as a result, which not only gave us growth, but it helped, well, educate a lot of other people on what Baldur's Gate is, how it works, and why everybody should play it. This is something that, again, you cannot really replicate unless you just give people the freedom to do whatever they want. There's a really good chance that if Baldur's Gate or Larian Studios came to any of these content creators and said, I specifically want you to do this, this, and this, there's a good chance that those videos never became popular. And as a result, a lot of the legacy or smaller content creators like myself would have never got the viewership that we did, which means that a lot of the information around the game wouldn't have ever really been communicated to the players, which probably would have released to much less success than the game actually came out to. But the one thing that ties all this together is that we've had discussions around the game before the game's release. We talked about early access and the marketing campaign and the bear scene and the controversy. But none of that would matter if the game didn't deliver. And it did. While Baldur's Gate 3's virality and marketing campaign were undoubtedly instrumental in its success, none of that would have mattered if the game itself wasn't good. Thankfully, Baldur's Gate 3 delivered on all the hype in a way that is incredibly rare in the gaming industry. With hundreds of hours of gameplay, memorable characters, incredible voice acting, beautiful visuals, deep RPG mechanics, incredible music, and engaging story, Baldur's Gate 3 is a true masterpiece. The game's quality was evident from the moment that the game was released, with video reviews on YouTube, player reactions on Twitch, and phenomenal scores from review publications propelling the game further and further forward. 9 and 10s from most reviewers, solidifying Baldur's Gate 3 as a game that would ultimately become an all-time classic. While I'm sure that other developers want to somehow replicate the success of Baldur's Gate 3, as it is a testament to the power of organic marketing and internet virality, the importance of delivering a high-quality product cannot be understated. If Baldur's Gate 3 didn't deliver, didn't satisfy the customers, then we would ultimately be talking about the potential closure of Larian Studios. Those indie developers that pushed back on Baldur's Gate 3, setting a new standard for RPGs moving forward, were right about one thing. A game of this size, with this much investment and production, could absolutely collapse a studio if it didn't succeed. Ultimately, the game's success is a result of a perfect storm of factors: a passionate developer team, a viral marketing moment, a dedicated community, and a game that is simply one of the best RPGs ever made. The popularity of Baldur's Gate 3 obviously really falls on the quality of the game itself. However, it was also a factor of a lot of different things, and one of those was just pure luck. And it's not, again, something that you can really replicate. See, Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have the marketing budgets of, say, a Diablo 4, where they can go and completely refashion a French church to make it Diablo 4 themed. They can't pay Halsey and whoever that K-pop star was to make a music video about Diablo 4. They don't have that kind of money. And they also don't necessarily have that kind of widespread consumer trust. While a lot of people are going to sit here and go, well, nobody trusts Blizzard. Most people outside of online communities do. They just see the title Diablo X and they're just going to buy it because that's what they're used to doing. I've liked their games in the past. I'm going to play their games now. Larian doesn't have that pedigree. While they have made great games in the past, they're not as well known as a Blizzard, an Activision, an EA, and etc. See, Baldur's Gate 3 was very much a grassroots movement, and that's why it felt so good to be a part of it. That's why everyone enjoyed being on that ride to the game's release and ultimately still continued to be on the ride after the game's release, even looking at today's current player numbers. The game is still over 150,000 concurrent players on Steam, which is wild for a single-player game. Yes, I know it has multiplayer, but it's widely a single-player thing. But a lot of that has to do with the fact of just how they've engaged with the community. They made us feel as though they were one of us, because they sponsored our favorite content creators to make content around the game. Some of my favorite videos and music videos now are related to Baldur's Gate 3. I jam the Bard song by Jonathan Young at least a few times a week. Anyway. But it's really enjoyable to be a part of something like that because you feel like they are a part of that journey as well. And this is something that I've felt all along, being a part of Early Access and being a part of all of their panels from hell. You could see how much they cared about it, but more than anything, you could see how much they cared about the community. And that's the follow-through. Because even though they had all of this viral success, and then ultimately the success of the game and its full release as well, I still feel like the one thing that helped hold this all together, the thing that just continues this smooth ride forward, is that they still today continue to engage with the community and make the game better. And I can't understate how important that is because of how Larian Studios was received by their audience and how their commitment to the community and their engagement with them post-launch of Baldur's Gate 3, the game has only just continued to grow and stay relevant far after the game's release. By actively engaging with players through social media and through their marketing campaigns, Larian Studios has demonstrated a genuine interest in the game's community and a willingness to be a part of it. And that's huge. Community engagement is essential for any game that wants to have a long shelf life. It allows the developers to identify and fix bugs, gather feedback on new features, research for future game projects, develop a new audience to sell to in the future, and just keep players engaged with the game. Larian Studios' ability to create a sense of community around the game has honestly made the game so much more enjoyable to be a part of, and that's all we want. We want to be included. Larian Studios' commitment to community engagement has paid off, well, insanely for them. As the game has continued to increase in player count and more people continue to talk about it, the game just continues to improve from every patch to every patch. All kinds of new features added to the game, things that I will be covering in a later video once I get more up to date with a lot of my news. I've been a little bit out of the loop on a lot of that stuff, but if developers don't want to say that Baldur's Gate 3 is a new standard going forward, that's fine. But Larian Studios is a new standard moving forward, and it is something that I want to see more studios take note of. I want to see other studios try to emulate the things that they have done. Because engaging with your community, being a part of them, is the best way for you to be able to understand what they want and what they need and how to best make the absolute best product that you can. And I don't think that that's something that's that difficult to do. I mean, the way that we look at Larian Studios is the same way that I used to look at Blizzard back in the day. It was a studio that I myself wanted to work for. I went to school for game design, ultimately dropped out and went for business and marketing afterwards, but it was a studio that I myself wanted to work for. And I think a lot of people did. A lot of people looked at it as this place where, oh man, that must be really fun to work at. Those must be great people to work for. And if you have a great work culture, if you have a great relationship with your community, you're going to make great games as a result. I understand that today, games are basically PR. And what I mean by that is great game, great company, bad game, bad company. And while that is true to a point, there's still more behind the veil. If you're engaging with your company and you're trying to make sure that you have the best place to work possible, chances are you're gonna make great games as a result. Now, I realize that the success of Baldur's Gate 3 is something that is incredibly difficult to emulate. Not only the cost and the production value and all the wild things that they did, all the wild things that happened as a result of the game's release and pre-release, but there's a lot of gems, a lot of really valuable discussions, a lot of really valuable ideas that a lot of studios need to take from this. Not only was this a valuable moment for gamers, because there's just a lot of really cool discussions and things that we've learned about ourselves and our purchasing habits, the things that we want, the things that we need. But I really hope that more studios learn from this, because I want more games like Baldur's Gate 3, and I want more studios like Larian. And I think that they can do it. I've been a doomer in some of my videos. I try not to be, because I would rather be, well, optimistic. I love games. I love talking with other gamers. Not all of you, but some of you. I just want more great games. And I have so thoroughly enjoyed Baldur's Gate 3. I've enjoyed talking about it. I'm going to continue to talk about it in the future, as well as other games. I have quite a few ideas stocked up. It's been over 20 days since I made my last video, and I've been fiending for it. I didn't realize just how much this has turned into just like a creative outlet, something to just get it out. Yeah, it's been really cool, and I missed it a lot, and it bothered me a lot not making videos, but to be honest, I really just did not have the time, and I still don't really. I'm still working 70 plus hours a week right now, and will for at least a few more weeks, but I just had to get something out. I just had to make a video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. Yeah, that's all I got. If you guys enjoyed the video, sub to the channel, like the video, comment, talk shit. I don't really care. Yeah, outside of that, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, my friends, and I'll see you in Baldur's Gate. Peace.